All right, some business stories. President Bola Tinubu has reaffirmed his support for a robust public-private sector partnership to grow the economy. He says this administration sustained bold and coordinated reforms are anchored on a strong adherence to accountability and transparency. The president said this when the members of the board and management of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group visited the villa that's in Abuja. The president also reiterated his unequivocal resolve to fully implement the 8 priority reforms area under the renewed Hope agenda within the next 3 years. Chairman of NESG, Mr. Olani Yusuf, welcomed the economic reforms announced by the president, specifically with respect to fuel subsidy removal, foreign exchange rate harmonization, food security, and palliatives to subnational governments.
The twists and turns is always going to be there in any democratic journey. And the economic turbulence that we ran into is not without silver lining. We believe in the courage of bold endeavors. And they can only be driven by a serious collaboration with the private sector and the public sector. Strong adherence to accountability and transparency in every way possible.
The federal government says it plans to cover 15 million households across the country under a social safety net project tagged Conditional Cash Transfer as intervention to elevate Nigerians out of poverty. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, revealed this in Abuja while meeting World Bank Country Director, Mr. Shubhan Chowdhury. The minister expressed gratitude to the World Bank team for continuous support to Nigeria and solicited more assistance to verify and expand the National Social Register. She explained that the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu led to the renaming of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation to directly focus on people and lift them out of poverty. World Bank Country Director, in his response, pledged to provide all the needed support for the new minister to deliver on its mandate, while assuring that the proposed disbursement of $800 million for social safety nets project will commence soon. Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative says the 3 tiers of government, federal, states, and local government council areas shared a total of 4.37 trillion naira from the federal accounts as statutory revenue allocations between January and June 2023. This is contained in NETI's latest report on the Federation Accounts Revenue Allocation for the first half of the year. NETI's Executive Secretary, Mr. Orji Ogbonaya Orji, who announced this in Abuja, said total distributable FAC allocations to the 3 tiers of government in the first and second quarter of 2023 stood at 2.32 trillion naira and 2.04 trillion naira, respectively. The report reveals that inflows into the Federation account in Q2 of 2023 declined by 23%, and distributable revenue fell by 12% when compared to the first quarter. A breakdown of the report shows that federal government received revenue of 1.78 trillion naira, representing 40.7%. States got 1.5 trillion naira, representing 34.5%, while local governments received 1.08 trillion naira, which is 24.8% of the total distributable revenue for the period. And latest report from the National Bureau of Statistics on Gross Domestic Product says the rail sector's contribution to Nigeria's economy declines to 2.20% year-on-year in the second quarter of 2023. According to the NBS report, real contribution to GDP in the second quarter of 2023 was 8.62%, lower than the 8.65% recorded in the second quarter of 2022, and lower than 10.13% recorded in the first quarter of 2023. The manufacturing sector comprises of 13 activities, including oil refining, cement, food, beverage, and tobacco, textile, apparel, and non-metallic products plastic and rubber products, footwear, wood and wood products, amongst others. Asian shares edge higher today as China stepped up efforts to support its housing sector and stabilize the yuan, though investors remain cautious ahead of U.S. job data that could make or break the case for further rate hikes. MSCI's broadest index of Asian Pacific shares outside of Japan rose 0.18%, while Japan's Nikkei was up 0.34%. China's benchmark index was 0.59%, with the real estate gauge narrowed early gains to 0.40%. Hong Kong cash stock market was closed for the day as Super Typhoon Solar approached southern China, but Hang Seng index features rose 0.23%. And moving on, the European Central Bank says Eurozone inflation remained unchanged at 5.3% in August. In the past 13 months, the ECB has consistently raised its interest rate in an effort to keep inflation in check. Analysts expect the bank might now consider pursuing this policy with a visible slowdown in economic growth. EU statistics agency Eurostat in July 2023 said inflation in 20 nations fell to 5.3%, down almost a percentage point from previous month. The consumer price index for Eurozone was supported by a 9.8% price increase in food, alcohol, and tobacco prices in August. The Malaysian government today will unveil a new master plan to increase the country's industrial output to 587.5 billion ringgit. That's about $126.5 billion US dollars by 2030, while also increasing employment. Prime Minister Awan Ibrahim, in his speech at the launch of a plan, said the implementation of the new industrial master plan 2030 will result in a growth of 2.3% from this year's onward and provide employment for 3.3 million people by 2030. He said the NIMP is designed to drive Malaysia's trajectory as a global leader in industrial development, extend the domestic linkages to create wealth across the nation, as well as strengthening its position in the global value chain. Mr. Ibrahim added that with a limited time window of 2030, Malaysia will seek to accelerate its pace towards digitalization and new technology, moving towards net zero carbon emissions and creating an enabling environment that ensures supply chain security.
The NIMP 2030 will also create opportunities for Malaysian SMEs to grow in manufacturing. Our SMEs in the manufacturing sector currently contribute only 8% of GDP and 9% to exports. There's a lot of potential to grow our SMEs in manufacturing in line with our economic Madani aspiration to strengthen firms of all sizes. The NIMP 2030, as for example, specific action plans to build SMEs capacities to enable them to be positioned higher in the global value chain. This in turn will help them scale up into mid-tier companies that could help Malaysia earn more foreign exchange earnings.
Australia's Competition and Consumer Commission is asking the court to fine Qantas Airways hundreds of millions of dollars a day after suing the carrier for allegedly selling tickets to thousands of customers after flights were cancelled. ACC said that the airline broke consumer law when it sold tickets to more than 8,000 flights between May and July 2022. Without disclosing they had been cancelled, Qantas said it would examine the allegations and respond in court, but argued that the period in question during the pandemic was a time of unprecedented upheaval across the global airline industry. And crude oil prices were set to snap a 2-week losing streak as they rose for the fourth consecutive session today due to tightening supplies and expectations that the OPEC Plus group of oil producers would extend output quotas to the end of the year. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude is selling at $83.80 with an upsurge of 0.20%. Brent also experienced an uptick of 0.26% to sell at $87.06. Bonny Light recorded an upward review of 1.62% to sell at $88.54. 35 cents. And for the OPEC basket, crude dealers are offering $87.76 with an upward price margin of 0.77%.